brought to you by Charity Mobile, the phone company that supports life and family. 5% of your monthly plan price goes to your favorite charity. Buy the way you believe at CharityMobile.com and use promo code TRADITION. The Synodal Church will have a James Martin face. That has been my prediction for some time, and it's becoming much more obvious that the Synod of Synodality was meant to open the minds of Catholics to novelty. That was the entire purpose of it. We saw attempts at promoting novelty in the church through what we'll call extra synodality means, using previous synods of bishops to try to achieve their ends. We saw this through Amoris Laetitia. We saw this through Fratelli Tutti, even Laudato Si. All of them contain novelty. But the way to impose novelty on the church is to give the laity the voice they want, that they think that they need, to feel welcomed and included in the church and the church's decision-making process. Remember, we are living in a time when the laity today are the worst catechized generation in history, worse than the previous generation who had been the worst catechized generation in history. It seems to be getting worse as a problem, to the point now where some laity admit that the church teaches X, Y, and Z about some issue or another, but that they reject that teaching, believing they can reject teachings of the faith and adopt a more secular view. There's no greater example of this in the church today than Pastor Jimmy Martin of the Jesuit Church, who rejects the church's teaching on the morality of the flesh. He simply does. He denies the inerrancy of sacred scripture, that a certain sin that James Martin has a peculiar interest in cries out to heaven for vengeance. The Bible describes it that way repeatedly. St. Paul repeats it, and he has said he believes St. Paul got it wrong, which means the Bible is not inerrant, according to James Martin, thus placing him outside the Catholic Church. Just kind of how it works. But that is a through line in all of this that we see. Synodality is meant to allow for greater inclusion of those who reject the church's moral authority on such rather basic questions. And so we now get a cardinal saying that he is now open to the church embracing the parody of holy matrimony that James Martin endorses and wants it in the church. We go to the English language version of Katholisch.de for this headline. Warsaw Cardinal Nix opens to James Martin pairings. Warsaw, Poland is one of the last EU states to prepare for the introduction of registered pairings for James Martin types. Warsaw's Cardinal Kazimierz Nix is in favor of a certain tolerance on the part of the church. There it is. This was coming. We knew it was. Because this is the future of the church. The church. So that won't be Catholicism. Perhaps it'll be the ape of the Church of Prophecy. I don't know for sure. But this is not Catholicism. This is not compatible with Catholicism. The church's position on this should be to stand up for the truth, defend the truth no matter how unpopular it is. And note, this is in Poland. There is this myth Catholics believe in the West right now, that there are two places in the church where orthodoxy prevails, one of which is Poland, which you can see is not, because the Polish state is about to impose this parody of holy matrimony on the faithful, and the church seems to be willing to at least tolerate it for now, because toleration is the first step to acceptance and imposing it on the church itself. The other place is, of course, Africa, where in recent weeks I've reminded people that the African bishops have publicly said they want to have the church embrace a person having multiple people with them in holy matrimony, a clear violation of church teaching. There is nowhere in the church at this time where orthodoxy prevails. When you accept that, you begin to understand the scope and scale of the crisis in the church, as well as understanding that Francis isn't actually the problem. He's just a logical extension of the problem. That he is just continuing the work of his predecessors. He's just being much more blunt and in your face about it. Here's what this cardinal had to say. A Polish cardinal. Remember Poland, the great defender of Catholic orthodoxy. From the article, quote, Warsaw Cardinal Kazimierz Nix is open to the idea of legal protection for James Martin pairings in Poland. People should be allowed to register their pairings without equating this pairing with holy matrimony, Nix told the broadcaster Polsat News on Wednesday evening. The Catholic Church would at best make its opinion known, but would probably not interfere in the corresponding legal process in Parliament, said the Cardinal. Equality Minister Katsini Kotula from the New Left Party published a draft partnership law a few days ago. This would allow two folks of the age required to get into the government-approved pairing at the office, regardless of their flesh. This would put them on an equal footing with those under the sacrament of holy matrimony in terms of tax and inheritance law and the choice of surname, among other things. However, they would not be able to bring the most vulnerable and youngest into the home. The Prime Minister's center-left coalition, the bill has met with resistance from a conservative party. According to Nix, the temperature of this discussion in Parliament shows, quote, that the problem is not so simple. Matrimony, especially matrimony in the church, must be distinguished from other types of pairings. However, there should be a certain tolerance on the part of the church for the desire of people to be able to enter into and dissolve partnerships more easily by civil contract, said the Archbishop of Warsaw. Poland is only one of 5 EU states that do not allow this parity of holy matrimony or the official registration of partnerships of those that defy nature. In recent surveys, a majority of the Polish population was in favor of introducing such a pairing law for the James Martin crowd, and somewhat, quote, you're not allowed to critique this issue on any platform, so you have to tread carefully. But I think you see the idea here. Notice that the Polish Catholic population was okay with it. And if that argument sounds familiar, just go back 20 years in the United States or Western Europe, and that was the exact same argument that we were getting. And my, how quickly civilization went off the rails here. Catholic Church, ladies and gentlemen, that's the state of the church now. Unwilling to resist to these things, to endorse a softer version of it, knowing full well what comes next. This bishop will undoubtedly, if he is around when the time comes, push for this in the church. James Martin's been pushing for it in the church. He's been pushing for no resistance from the Vatican. The end state, end goal, is the blessings, those diabolical blessings from Fiducia Supplicans, which if you do read the document, explicitly says couples. Explicitly says that. That is for them. We already have a church endorsement of this, but that's just the first step, because it's always only the first step. And because the church tends to operate on much longer time horizons than the secular world, it's only the first step. They're willing to wait a few years before they push for the next step, and the next step, and the next step. Except they'll do it faster than the church has traditionally done things because, quite frankly, these are secularists in miters. They have no love for the Catholic Church. They have no love for the Holy Faith. The only thing that they love is the values of the world, materialism, and the sins of the flesh. And they want the church to get out of the way of it. What do you think of this? Let me know in the comments. Are you surprised in the slightest that a Polish cardinal would be pushing this? Reminder that Pope Francis has replaced something now like 80% of the College of Cardinals with his own men. So should this surprise you? Let me know in the comments if it does or does not. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. As always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.